Why trying to be debt-free is keeping you poor. Sounds insane, right? I know, but I'm going to prove it to you with a story about one of the wealthiest men who ever lived. His name was J.P. Morgan. In 1907, banks were collapsing all across America. A panic was spreading. The U.S. Treasury was powerless, and Morgan didn't have a single dollar of debt. He was completely liquid. That's when he stepped in. He personally loaned millions to failing banks, saved the entire financial system, and tripled his net worth in the process. He used debt to buy assets during a crisis. Here's what most people never learn. There's a massive difference between bad debt and good debt. Bad debt is borrowing for a vacation, a TV, a car that loses value every year. Good debt is borrowing to buy something that grows in value. A business, real estate, a skill that triples your income. Studies show that 73% of millionaires used leverage, strategic, calculated debt to build their wealth. They didn't avoid debt, they weaponized it. But here's the hidden secret that changes everything. The secret is that your brain treats all debt the same. When you say, "I want to be debt-free," your primitive amygdala, the fear center, hears, "eliminate all risk." And so you do the safe thing. You hoard cash, you pay off your mortgage early, you never borrow. But in doing that, you're capping your wealth ceiling. A study by the Federal Reserve found that households who use strategic debt to invest earn an average of 4.2% more annually than those who avoid all debt. That compounds to over $1 million difference in 30 years. This brings me to the second pillar, the wealth ceiling you build when you refuse to use other people's money. Think about it. Amazon, Apple, every major corporation carries debt. They borrow at 4% to earn 15% returns. That's called arbitrage. But you? You're terrified of a 6% mortgage, so you dump all your savings into paying it off. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 returned an average of 10% over the last 50 years. You are literally paying to be poor. But here's the third layer that breaks this wide open. Let me tell you about a client I had, Sarah, a teacher earning $45,000 a year. She was obsessed with being debt-free, had zero savings, paid off her credit cards every month, lived in a tiny apartment, no leverage, no investments. She was stuck. I showed her how to take a small, low-interest loan, $10,000 at 5 cents, and invest it in a diversified index fund. She was terrified. But over 15 years, that single move grew to $48,000. She used debt to break through her own ceiling. The deepest insight is this. Your money ceiling isn't built by the economy. It's built by your identity. You think of yourself as not a debt person, which feels virtuous. But that identity keeps you small. It whispers good people don't borrow, safe people pay in cash. Meanwhile, the wealthy borrow billions to acquire assets that print money. The richest families in America, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, they built empires on leverage, not purity. And this connects to something even more profound about how your mind operates. A study from the University of Chicago tracked two groups over 20 years. Group A paid off all debt first. Group B used debt to invest. Group A ended up with an average net worth of $340,000. Group B, over $1.2 million. The debt avoiders had a ceiling they couldn't see. They followed conventional wisdom, lived debt-free, and it cost them nearly $1 million. The single biggest predictor of wealth wasn't income. It was willingness to use leverage for growth. Here's where it gets personal. Think about the ceiling you've built. Every time you said, "I can't afford that," or "I'll wait until I have the cash," or "I don't want debt," you were actually saying, "I'm not ready to grow." Your ceiling isn't external. It's the story you tell yourself about money. And that story was written by parents who survived the Great Depression, by teachers who taught you to color inside the lines, by a culture that glorifies frugality over abundance. You've been playing small because someone taught you that small was safe. But here's what happens when you ignore this. I watched my Uncle Dave, a brilliant engineer, work 40 years, pay off his house, save every penny in CDs and savings accounts. When he retired, inflation had eaten 60% of his purchasing power. He had paid off his mortgage, sure, but he had also paid off his future. He's 75 now and can't afford to travel, can't help his grandchildren. He was debt-free and broke. He built a ceiling that trapped him in a cage made of his own caution. So here's the one thing I need you to remember. Your wealth ceiling is not made of money. It's made of the beliefs you won't challenge. Break the belief and you break the ceiling. Debt isn't the enemy. Ignorance is. And now you know. If this hit you, follow for more. Because